On this Monday night, a Manitoba man accused of killing his own family.
It's heartbreaking to speak to it.
What police have revealed about the victims and the investigation. The truth about the ArriveCAN app.
The glaring disregard for basic management.
The mistakes, the deficiencies, and why it's impossible to know how much the app costs taxpayers. No escape. Israel's deadly push into southern Gaza, the pressure on Israel to protect civilians, what the world is dreading could happen next. Plus, the 2 hostages just rescued. And that lingering cough. What doctors are recommending that won't require a trip to the pharmacy.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin with another case of domestic abuse that has ended in tragedy. In Manitoba, police have revealed that 3 young children aged 6, 4, and 2.5 months, along with their 30-year-old mother and her 17-year-old niece, were all killed yesterday near Winnipeg. The suspect is the children's 29-year-old father. He has been charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder. Manitoba's Premier was in tears today as he spoke about the case and the bonds of family.
These bonds are sacred. And this time is difficult for us right now because these sacred bonds have been broken in our province. And there is no context, and there is no explanation that can make this okay. This is pure darkness.
Marney Blunt is in Winnipeg with what we know about this harrowing crime.
Donna, it was a tragic killing spree, and now Manitoba RCMP have laid 5 first-degree murder charges against 29-year-old Ryan Manoakeesick. Charred marks filled with pieces of rubber and glass on the side of Highway 248 in the rural municipality of Cartier. A scene of a horrifying event Sunday where 3 children were pulled from a burning vehicle. They were pronounced dead on the scene.
Young innocent lives were senselessly taken yesterday, and we grieve with all Manitobans.
On Monday, police said the accused, the children's father, pulled them from the burning vehicle. That burnt-out vehicle taken away Sunday night. The body of a 30-year-old woman, the children's mother and partner of the accused, was found in the ditch along Highway 3 south of Carman earlier that day. All 5 victims lived together in Carman.
I'm sure everybody in this town will be devastated.
Randy McFarland lives just a few doors down from the home where a 17-year-old girl was found dead. She's been identified as the niece of the 30-year-old victim. The home and kids' toys in the front yard, now a crime scene surrounded by police tape.
You can't be not affected. The question you always have is when things like this happen, like, why the kids?
It's a tragic reality that's becoming all too common in our communities. According to Stats Canada data, intimate partner violence has been on the rise since 2014. And in 2022, the victims of almost 8 of 10 police-reported cases were women and girls. Grand Chief Kathy Merrick calls the event heartbreaking.
It's not our way, in our culture, in our language, when we talk about violence.
Premier Wab Kinew also calling on Manitobans of all walks of life to pray for the family of the victims, the community of Carman, and all of Manitoba.
We are one Manitoba. Nothing can break that. We will remember that this is a good place where darkness will not win.
RCMP were asked about the accused's alleged history of domestic violence, but declined to comment. They also said they will not be releasing the names of the victims at the request of the families. Donna?
Marney Blunt in Winnipeg tonight, thanks. Days after Belleville, Ontario declared a state of emergency because of a rash of overdoses, the city's mayor is asking the province for help dealing with the mental health, substance use, and homelessness crisis.
The magnitude these issues and pressure being felt by our emergency services have reached a breaking point.
The mayor is requesting the Ontario government help fill a $2 million funding gap for a planned community hub that would deliver additional health and social services. He's also asking for money to build a detox center. Belleville declared its emergency last week after 17 overdoses were reported in 24 hours. 14 of them happened within a 2-hour window. We'd all like to forget about the pandemic, but it is back in the news, specifically the ArriveCAN app the federal government developed to keep track of and screen travelers. The federal Auditor General says basic record keeping was so bad, it is impossible to say exactly how much the whole thing cost. Original estimates pegged the cost of the ArriveCAN app at $80,000. That ballooned to a staggering $59 million. But that's just a guess because there was such a glaring disregard for financial record keeping and basic management practices. Mackenzie Gray unpacks the Auditor General's report.
It's a damning assessment of a controversial program.
This is probably some of the worst financial record keeping that I've seen.
The ArriveCAN app was so poorly managed that Auditor General Karen Hogan could only guess how much it cost. The estimate? $59.5 million, so murky because nearly 20% of the invoices to the Canada Border Services Agency didn't have enough information.
This audit shows a glaring disregard for basic management and contracting practices throughout ArriveCAN's development and implementation.
The development was largely managed by outside companies at a hefty premium. Hogan estimated each outside consultant got nearly $1,100 a day, while federal public servants would have cost $675. Much of that money going to GC Strategies, a two-person consulting firm that got millions in work through a non-competitive process, then subcontracted it out to third parties.
Under no circumstance would we pretend that because the whole world was facing this global pandemic, that the contracting rules that need to be robust to handle taxpayers' money can somehow be disregarded.
Despite the high price tag, the app didn't work very well. Hogan's office found that over 10,000 fully vaccinated travelers were needlessly forced to quarantine.
The very same department that is responsible for our borders and our ports took $60 million or more for the Arrive scam.
2 senior CBSA public servants have been suspended without pay for their involvement with the app, and others didn't disclose gifts they got from vendors involved with the program, including whiskey tastings. Topics set to be discussed at a parliamentary committee before it was abruptly adjourned last week after Liberal, NDP and Bloc MPs feared asking further questions could impact a potential criminal investigation.
I'm not a lawyer, okay, but what I read, it's scary.
That report has only been made available to MPs, but a CBSA official told the Commons Committee they found evidence of misconduct with senior officials involved with ArriveCAN. Donna? All right, Mackenzie in Ottawa, thanks. A coalition of health professionals and experts is in Ottawa this week pushing for a national pharmacare plan. They believe a national drug plan would save money and lives.
People living and working in Canada are having to choose between heating their homes, putting food on the table, or paying for their prescription medication.
The Liberal government promised a national pharmacare plan as part of their agreement with the NDP. The NDP leader has extended the deadline to March 1st for the Liberals to follow through. Now to Israel's war on Hamas. People in Gaza are scrambling to move again, fearing what Israel will do next. This is Gaza today. Palestinians fleeing again, terrified after the intense overnight assault on Gaza's southernmost city. 67 people were killed in Rafah. That's according to the Hamas-run health ministry. In the midst of that, Israeli special forces extracted these 2 hostages who'd spent 129 days in captivity in Gaza. They've now been reunited with their families. Israel's prime minister is under pressure to save more of the hostages and protect civilians in Gaza. More than 1.4 million Gazans have already fled south to escape the Israeli ground invasion. They're now crowded into makeshift shelters in Rafah, next to Egypt's border. Benjamin Netanyahu vows a ground offensive on Rafah is coming and insists an evacuation plan is being prepared. But Israel's allies are asking him to think twice.
What the Netanyahu government is asking them to do, which is to leave again, is unacceptable because they have nowhere to go. And so that's why we need right now for the violence to stop.
The death toll is already staggering. More than 28,000 people in Gaza are dead. That's according to Gaza's health ministry. The majority of them are women and children. The American president is said to be increasingly frustrated that Benjamin Netanyahu is not willing to change tactics. Redmond Shannon reports and warning some of the images are disturbing.
The final goodbye to another child victim of this war. These are some of the dozens of people killed in airstrikes on the crowded buildings and campsites of Rafah overnight. Mai says her father was also killed. The bombings, part of an operation that freed 2 Israeli hostages held in Rafah. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu thanked the special police unit that got the men out, calling it a perfect operation. The rescue with deadly consequences may be a sign of things to come in Rafah. Netanyahu insists Israel will launch a ground assault on the city, whose population has ballooned to 1.4 million people since October.
An extremely high number of civilians, mostly women and children, will likely be killed or injured.
The US, Canada and other increasingly frustrated Western powers pleading with Netanyahu to consider the innocent civilians.
But Netanyahu doesn't listen to anyone. They're going to evacuate. Where? To the moon? Where are they going to evacuate these people?
The major military operation in Rafah should not proceed without a credible plan for ensuring the safety and support of more than 1 million people sheltering there.
But the Netanyahu government insists it must plough on to defeat Hamas and to free all Israeli hostages.
In telling Israel not to attack because civilians will be hurt, but then resisting efforts to get civilians out of harm's way, they have rendered themselves complicit with Hamas's human shield strategy.
For the international community to help, they will need a plan and a place for more than 1 million people to go. Israel has not yet said where that could be, nor when a ground attack might begin. Donna?
Redmond in London, thanks. We've all had it. Some of you may even have it now. What do you do when you have a cough that won't go away? Coming up, advice from doctors. It is cold and flu season, and if you got sick and are still feeling the lingering effects, you're not alone. Doctors say what they call post-infectious cough strikes about 1 in 4 Canadians. And perhaps the most frustrating thing is there's not much you can do about it. Abigail Beeman explains.
Like this. Long after her bronchitis cleared in December, Marie-Josée Houle was left with this cough.
You know, like go to bed NyQuil so I can have a night without coughing, but that's what I do every day.
Dr. Kevin Liang sees so many patients with coughs lasting weeks after a respiratory illness, it prompted him to co-author this article in the Canadian Medical Association Journal about the persistent but not contagious symptom.
Patience and time is the ultimate treatment for post-infectious cough. And a lot of the medications really don't work, and it can be quite costly.
I don't typically want to get medicine unless I'm really put out.
Now, there are some situations where you should seek medical attention. For example, if your cough lasts longer than 8 weeks, or if there are other red flags or new symptoms, especially if you cough up blood.
So people are coming down with influenza, COVID, and RSV, respiratory syncytial virus. All 3 of these infections affect the lungs and the airways, and all 3 can commonly result in a post-infectious cough that can last for weeks afterwards.
Dr. Sean Aaron says after years of keeping apart, we're seeing more post-pandemic viral respiratory infections, but he's optimistic about the next flu seasons.
I'm hoping it will be better because most of us are developing more natural immunity post-infection.
For those suffering, solutions are limited to sleeping elevated on extra pillows, getting lots of rest, and plenty of fluids, as in listen to your mother rather than call your doctor. Abigail Beeman, Global News, Ottawa.
There is a warning tonight from researchers about protecting migrating species at risk. According to a new UN report, 44% of more than 1,100 migratory species are undergoing population declines, and 1 in 5 are threatened with extinction. Heather Yurex-West looks at what's at risk here in Canada and whether they can be saved.
In the first report of its kind, a group of UN researchers has found migratory animals are in trouble.
So these species are wide-ranging, from birds to sea turtles to whales to gorillas.
It's been almost 50 years since a UN convention was drafted to protect more than 1,000 species that travel across international borders. Almost half of the animals listed are seeing their numbers continue to decline.
The two largest threats are indeed overexploitation, as well as habitat destruction and fragmentation. And there are other threats, of course, like pollution and climate change that are also at play.
Canada has seen the impact climate change is having on migratory fish up close. This video shot near Belleville, BC in the fall of 2022 shows 80,000 salmon dead in dried up streams.
That's something that's actually explicitly highlighted in the report, is the I would say, near catastrophic declines in many aquatic ecosystems, including for freshwater fish.
There have been some success stories. 14 species have seen their conservation status improve, including the humpback whale. The report also calls on policymakers to do more to protect migration corridors. In Western Canada, where major highways divide parts of Banff and Yoho National Park, a system of wildlife crossings, overpasses and underpasses has been heralded as one of Canada's biggest conservation success stories.
I want to remind people that many, recoveries have happened. Canada geese used to be a species which were almost harvested to extinction in the 1900s. And of course, those migrations have come back with gusto.
Though the report's authors warn the window to act is closing fast, with international cooperation required to ensure time for many of the world's migratory species isn't quickly running out. Heather Yurex-West, Global News, Calgary.
Still ahead, the search for survivors after a deadly landslide in the Philippines. In Mexico, a plane carrying 4 Canadian skydivers has crash-landed on a beach. It's not clear why the plane made a forced landing on the busy beach in the Pacific resort town of Puerto Escondido. A 62-year-old man who was on the beach at the time was killed. The 4 Canadians and 1 Mexican on board the plane are in stable condition. In the Philippines, at least 68 people are known to have died in last week's landslide in the southern Mindanao region. Hundreds of rescuers have been working constantly to dig through the thick mud, searching for survivors. The landslide hit the village on Tuesday. The area has had weeks of heavy rain. At least 51 people are still missing. In Kenya, marathon world record holder Kelvin Kiptum and his coach have died in a car crash. The Kenyan runner set a world record at the Chicago Marathon in October, finishing in 2 hours and 35 seconds. Police say Kiptum was driving with his coach and a young woman when the car veered off the road and hit a tree. He was 24 years old. Instant classic next, a thrilling Super Bowl with a fairy tale ending. Canadian golfer Nick Taylor had a dramatic victory at the Phoenix Open, winning his 4th career PGA Tour title. It is his 2nd win in 8 months. Last June, Taylor became the first Canadian in 69 years to win the Canadian Open. And then there was this little game. The Kansas City Chiefs beat the San Francisco 49ers 25-22 last night. That makes the Chiefs the first back-to-back Super Bowl champions for the first time in nearly 2 decades, after winning their 3rd Super Bowl in 5 years, creating a football dynasty. For football fans, it was a must-watch. Not only did the game go down to the wire, it had a little bit of everything, from the halftime show to the superstar in the stands. Eric Sorensen reports.
How to turn the most watched sports spectacle into something bigger? Turn the most famous pop star into a fan. Super Bowl meets superstar. Taylor Swift's globetrotting created the pregame drama, her boyfriend featured in regular close-ups, and quick flashes of her told the story of the game. The phenomenon powerful enough that conspiracy theory suggested Swift could influence not only the game's outcome, but President Biden's re-election. Final audience numbers are expected to add millions to the 100+ million who watched a year ago.
A lot of that is down to new members of Generation Z tuning into football and to women. So she has this power to draw women in, and that's new in a sport that's historically been dominated by men.
Yeah, what's up? The TV ads, though many annoyingly unavailable on the Canadian broadcast, were $7 million US per 30 seconds. And this year, that may have been a bargain.
Mr. Messi!
What other event in the world have you got where everybody is watching the same thing at the same time?
The halftime show. That brings in yet another mass audience. It featured Usher, along with Alicia Keys, Her, and some hip-hop nostalgia with Ludacris. As big a deal as all that non-football stuff was, the game asserted itself in the end. One of the most nail-biting finishes, orchestrated by the real star, Patrick Mahomes. His 3 Super Bowl victories in 5 years, elevating Mahomes arguably to among the greatest quarterbacks ever.
To have our stamp on this great NFL history is something that I'll never take for granted.
Football and Swift were like 2 supernovas colliding. It's possible between her beer chugging and Travis Kelce screaming at his coach, demand for the dynamic duo now has crested. But who wasn't waiting for that post-game smooch? Even the U.S. president seized on the outcome his conspiratorial opponents feared most, tweeting, "Just like we drew it up." Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
That is Global National for this Monday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is this great gray owl near Edmonton. We'd love to see Your Canada. Please email it to viewers@globalnational.com. And thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.